Strong, secure, everlasting, innovative, resilient, stylish. Throughout the past 110 years, the face of building materials has continued to evolve. We're here for a lifetime of living. This is Brickworks. More than brick, and more than just building products, we are a foundation for today's lifestyle and a leader for today's style. We manufacture a wide range of building products, products like no other, local and international innovation, sourced from around the world to exceed customer expectations. Bricks, roof tiles, pavers, masonry blocks and retaining walls, precast concrete, concrete sleepers, stone. Distinctive and luxurious products, beautiful products that stand the test of time. Our pursuits have no borders. We continue to expand internationally with an increasing portfolio of brands in North America, including Glen-Gery, Sioux City Brick, Lawrenceville and Cushwa. More than just building, we're building with confidence. Sustainable manufacturing and products that are shaping our future. We are committed to conducting business that best serves the interest of the community and the building industry, so that we create strong and enduring relationships. Brick continues to inspire some of the most incredible architecture and engineering around the world. Designed and developed through product partnerships with leading architects. Custom and bespoke products for endless design creativity. We are helping to shape the architectural landscape. Sustainable, distinctive, robust, customizable, building the impossible and turning designs into reality. Everlasting expressions of colour, texture and form. Not just a building process, but an intimate and personal statement of style, colour and lifestyle commitment. Constructing places of creativity, hubs of inspiration, places of possibilities. Our design studios continue to evolve. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Hobart, Perth, and coming soon, Philadelphia and New York. Providing a one-stop shop for products, design advice, industry-leading events and thought leadership discussions. Attracting like-minded individuals, creating partnerships, inspiring style, informing thoughts and evolving our industry. Over 110 years of experience, a suite of market-leading brands, building inspiration and innovation with an unmatched standing of style. This is Brickworks.
Time is a curious thing. It flies by, and it stands still. What we do with our time says a lot. Do we waste it? Savor it. Only time will tell. Cushwa Brick by Glen-Gery. Time-tested, craft perfected.
They're bold, unique, distinct, and extraordinary. They speak, build, save, and never, ever rest. No wonder the things they make are classic, modern, and beautiful. Each handmade brick by Glen-Gery is individually shaped, uniquely textured, and richly colored, all to create a look that is unmistakably you. Meticulously crafted to imperfect perfection, they combine to create something truly greater than the sum of their parts. Brick unlike any other. Brick that enhances every project, any project, and lends modern looks to a classic material. Brick that outdoes every other. Handmade brick by Glen-Gery. character beyond compare. How do you stand out in a city defined by history, edge, and style? By making something impossible to ignore. Something that elevates and enhances every space. That astounds and intrigues every person. Something capable of galvanizing an entire community of architects and idea builders. Something made possible by Brickworks. Building products housed in a space as unique and interesting as the materials themselves. A space to leverage expert advice, attend premier events, and experience a full selection of thoughtfully curated brands, where industry leaders gather to discuss cutting-edge trends and to forge new ones, where members of a global community can find what they need to stand out and see the depth of design inherent to every brick. A place where brick isn't just a building block, but the most captivating building on the block. The Brickworks Design Studio in Philadelphia.
In a world of either or, this or that, form or function, we find the best choice is never having to choose at all. Because when thoughtful practicality meets unprecedented innovation and undeniable style, you can build anything and sacrifice nothing with a product that installs simply and impresses endlessly. You can have it all, from wall to wall. How? With a facade that endures all conditions, is safe and fire resistant, keeps its trademark colors, and makes lasting impressions. So what's here today will still be stunning tomorrow, and for many tomorrows to come. Terrasad, a ceramic facade system by Glen-Gery. Impressively built to build impressively.
Strong, secure, everlasting, innovative, resilient, stylish. Throughout the past 110 years, the face of building materials has continued to evolve. We're here for a lifetime of living. This is Brickworks. More than brick, and more than just building products, we are a foundation for today's lifestyle and a leader for today's style. We manufacture a wide range of building products like no other, local and international innovation, sourced from around the world to exceed customer expectations. Bricks, roof tiles, pavers, masonry blocks and retaining walls, precast concrete, concrete sleepers, stone, distinctive and luxurious products, beautiful products that stand the test of time. Our pursuits have no borders. We continue to expand internationally with an increasing portfolio of brands in North America, including Glen-Gery, Sioux City Brick, Lawrenceville, and Cushwa. More than just building, we're building with confidence. Sustainable manufacturing and products that are shaping our future. We are committed to conducting business that best serves the interest of the community and the building industry, so that we create strong and enduring relationships. Brick continues to inspire some of the most incredible architecture and engineering around the world. Designed and developed through product partnerships with leading architects. Custom and bespoke products for endless design creativity. We are helping to shape the architectural landscape. Sustainable, distinctive, robust, customizable, building the impossible and turning designs into reality. Everlasting expressions of colour, texture and form. Not just a building process, but an intimate and personal statement of style, colour and lifestyle commitment. Constructing places of creativity, hubs of inspiration, places of possibilities. Our design studios continue to evolve. Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Hobart, Perth, and coming soon, Philadelphia and New York. Providing a one-stop shop for products, design advice, industry-leading events and thought leadership discussions. Attracting like-minded individuals, creating partnerships, inspiring style, informing thoughts and evolving our industry. Over 110 years of experience, a suite of market-leading brands, building inspiration and innovation with an unmatched standing of style. This is Brickworks.
Time is a curious thing. It flies by, and it stands still. What we do with our time says a lot. Do we waste it? Savor it. Only time will tell. Cushwa Brick by Glen-Gery. Time-tested, craft perfected.
They're bold, unique, distinct, and extraordinary. They speak, build, save, and never, ever rest. No wonder the things they make are classic, modern, and beautiful. Each handmade brick by Glen-Gery is individually shaped, uniquely textured, and richly colored, all to create a look that is unmistakably you. Meticulously crafted to imperfect perfection, they combine to create something truly greater than the sum of their parts. Brick unlike any other. Brick that enhances every project, any project, and lends modern looks to a classic material. Brick that outdoes every other. Handmade brick by Glen-Gery. Character beyond compare.
How do you stand out in a city defined by history, edge, and style? By making something impossible to ignore. Something that elevates and enhances every space. That astounds and intrigues every person. Something capable of galvanizing an entire community of architects and idea builders. Something made possible by Brickworks. Building products housed in a space as unique and interesting as the materials themselves. A space to leverage expert advice, attend premier events, and experience a full selection of thoughtfully curated brands, where industry leaders gather to discuss cutting-edge trends and to forge new ones, where members of a global community can find what they need to stand out and see the depth of design inherent to every brick. A place where brick isn't just a building block, but the most captivating building on the block. The Brickworks Design Studio in Philadelphia.
In a world of either or, this or that, form or function. We find the best choice is never having to choose at all. Because when thoughtful practicality meets unprecedented innovation and undeniable style, you can build anything and sacrifice nothing with a product that installs simply and impresses endlessly. You can have it all, from wall to wall. How? With a facade that endures all conditions, is safe and fire resistant, keeps its trademark colors, and makes lasting impressions. So what's here today will still be stunning tomorrow, and for many tomorrows to come. Terrasod, a ceramic facade system by Glen-Gery. Impressively built to build impressively.
All right, Jay, if I could have you share your screen, please.
All right, let's see. About that, Brian.
Looks great. All right. Well, good afternoon, folks, and thank you for attending today's webinar on Introduction to Thin Brick Systems with our Glen-Gery Wall Systems Business Development Manager, Jay Morrison. My name is Brian Yansak, and I am the Design Studio and Events Coordinator for Glen-Gery, based out of Philadelphia. During the presentation, you will notice the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Please feel free to submit any questions throughout the presentation, and they will be answered at its conclusion. Your attendance will be marked, and we ask that you stay on for the duration of the presentation in order to receive your credit. Everyone attending the duration of the course will be receiving a certificate of completion within the next few business days, and those who provided their AIA number during registration will be submitted for AIA credit as well. If you are participating but did not register and wish to receive AIA credit, please email events@glengery.com. That is events@glengery.com with your information, and I will be happy to make sure that that happens for you. Today's session will also be recorded, and a link for you to access it will be provided within your certificate of completion. I would now like to introduce our speaker today, Jay Morrison. Jay spent 15 years in the dry cleaning and coin laundry industry when one day, while sitting at his desk, he watched the construction of a precast parking deck next door. Intrigued by the complexity and efficiency, Jay was especially puzzled when concrete panels arrived at the job site with thin brick embedded in the concrete. 6 months later, Jay began working for the very company that provided the thin brick for the parking deck that initially captured his attention. Specializing in an undeserved and misunderstood segment of the greater brick industry, Jay is driven by educating architects, contractors, installers, and owners on the benefits of thin brick wall systems. A graduate of Clemson University, Jay holds a bachelor's degree in marketing and has a certified brick specialist certification from the Brick Industry Association. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Jay.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. And what a bunch of wonderful videos there as we were leading in. We really do have some fantastic products at Glen-Gery. So thank you for joining me today for this webinar series presented by Glen-Gery. And like Brian said, my name is Jay Morrison, and I'm the Business Development Manager for Glen-Gery Wall Systems. And today we are going to be discussing thin brick and thin brick wall systems. Now, this presentation has been developed to give architects a starting point when considering thin brick for your next masonry project. It's important to remember, though, that thin brick is not right for every masonry project, but it is one more tool you can put in your design bag to give you greater flexibility when designing with masonry. So again, thank you for joining me today. So for today's presentation, we'll have a question and answer function that will allow you to ask questions. And I'll check in on this periodically to make sure that everybody who does have a question will get it answered. but we are expecting quite a few participants today. So there is a chance that if we get bombarded with too many questions, we might have to stay a little late or get back to you later on down the road. But chances are, if you've got a question, somebody else is thinking the same thing. So definitely feel free to ask. This is your presentation, and I want you to be able to get out of it exactly what you need before starting your next thin brick project. But first, a little bit more about Glen-Gery and Brickworks. Brickworks was formed in 1934 and is headquartered in Sydney, Australia. And Brickworks is Australia's largest brick manufacturer with operations across all the major states. And in 2018, Brickworks acquired Glen-Gery Corporation. Glen-Gery was founded in 1890 as one of the nation's largest and oldest brick manufacturers, with 8 brick manufacturing facilities, mainly across the Mid-Atlantic and the Midwest. And we have 1 manufactured stone facility in Kentucky. And you can find all of our Glen-Gery products both in the United States and Canada. We are sold through a network of distributors, and we have local masonry supply centers in select markets as well. Now, Glen-Gery provides a wide range of products and support tools for design professionals, and those include face brick and thin brick, of course. It also provides structural brick, manufactured in natural stone. We have multiple lines of pavers. We offer glazed brick, both in full depth and in thin profiles. We also offer colored and pre-blended mortar. And on the support side, we have product and technical profiles, multiple case studies, and AIA presentations like the one you're seeing today. And we're going to continue our webinar series past this one, so we'll have many more to come. So please keep checking your email, checking the Glen-Gery Eventbrite page, because we have another one coming up again very soon. We also offer wall system guidance and suggestions, detail reviews, free specification reviews, and we offer guide specifications as well. Now, not only do we manufacture brick in the United States, but we also import brick from all over the world, particularly from Europe, including our San Selmo series from Italy. We have our Venetian glass brick, and that's right, glass brick, not glass block, and it is a truly mesmerizing product, and we have multiple colors with multiple finishes available as well. It really is truly a unique product. Our line of clay coat and glazes, both for residential and commercial, both for interior and exterior uses, a very versatile line of architectural glaze and clay coat products. And then our York handmade brick. And if you were around at the beginning before we got started, you may have seen one of these videos discussing handmade brick. It is just like it sounds. It is brick made by hand, and Glen-Gery is one of the very few manufacturers left that can still make brick by hand. Our Roman Maximus series out of Iowa, this real long linear look, nominal 2-foot length, just a beautiful product, both for architectural and residential purposes, or commercial and residential purposes. Our Creative Minds collection and our Landmark Stone collection that we manufacture in Kentucky, again, good for residential and commercial projects. We have multiple lines of pavers. And speaking, one more import here to discuss, we have our Feldhaus line of thin brick that we import from Germany. And the Feldhaus line is unique because it's great for all different types of thin brick wall system applications. Our True Bricks metal rail system for installing thin brick, really unique because it doesn't utilize adhesion, it utilizes mechanical fastening with grooves that are cut into the top and the bottom of the brick to secure it mechanically before it is installed on the wall. Our ThinTech line of metal panels, which does use adhesion and wall ties, and it's very, very simple and very, very easy to use. It's really neat. You can transform old spaces to make it look new, or you can take the old space and slap an old looking handmade brick on there to make your brand new project look old. Whatever you'd like, you can achieve that look with ThinTech. We mentioned masonry accessories, and want to point out that we do provide expert specification reviews at no cost for all your masonry accessory specifications. Definitely take advantage of that. That is such a big value add whenever you are doing any masonry project. Our Terrasod line of terracotta rain screen, available in multiple colors, different finishes, just a beautiful line. in both standard format and a longer format, a 4-foot length as well. And at Glen-Gery and Brickworks, we are led by our core values, and those are care, collaborate, exceed, innovate, integrity, and lead. And at Brickworks and Glen-Gery, our motto is that we aim to build or to make beautiful building products that last forever. So again, this is Introduction to Thin Brick Systems, and my name is Jay Morrison. And this presentation is AIA approved for 1 credit hour and is HSW. And if you haven't already, remember to fill out that Eventbrite form with your AIA information so that you can get credit for attending this presentation today. Chances are you've already done that, but if you're viewing this on someone else's computer screen or in a boardroom, then you may not have registered. Please do that. And you can always check back with events@glengery.com to get that information in there if you have not already. So Glen-Gery is a registered provider of a number of different AIA continuing education programs. Please feel free to reach out to me or anyone else at Glen-Gery for a complete list of all of our presentation offerings. And this presentation is protected by U.S. and international copyright law. And for a full list of resources, specifications, guide specs, please visit glengery.com for all the information that you may need. Now, some learning objectives. Today we're going to review the various thin brick shapes and sizes and specifications, become familiar with as many possible thin brick design applications. We're going to compare benefits and limitations of thin brick versus full brick veneer, and we're going to review the different thin veneer systems and application methods. But what is a thin brick? Well, it's exactly what we say it is. It's actual clay or shale masonry units. It's not concrete, not foam, not plastic. And yes, there are many imitators out there. Now, the International Building Code defines masonry as either anchored or adhered, anchored being your traditional depth brick with a full thickness of either 3 inches or more, 3 5/8 to 4 inches, 3 1/2, 3 5/8 is usually your most common, with a max pounds per square foot of 40. And these are secured with approved mechanical fasteners. And then we have the adhered, and this is where your thin brick is going to fall in to the International Building Code. That's typically a 1/2 inch to 1 3/4 inches thick. It's important to note that anything under a 1/2 inch, we just call tile. Anything between that 1 3/4 and 3 inches will probably be referred to as soaps. Now, thin brick masonry veneer is going to have a max pounds per square foot of 15, but if you've specified a 5/8 inch thin brick, it's a pretty good chance that that's going to weigh about 5.5 pounds per square foot. All right, and those are going to be secured and supported through adhesion, and that's typical, but not in every single case. All right, thin brick benefits, plenty of them to go over here. First, reduced fuel and energy use. Thin brick's about 1/6 the material of full depth brick. So it takes 1/6 the effort to get this out of the ground, 1/6 the gas in the kiln to fire up this product, 1/6 the fuel in the trucks to get it to the job site. We want to be green. We want to be good stewards of our environment, and thin brick helps in that process. There are usually lead points available for you as well for using thin brick. There's reduced wall costs, including no shelf angles or reduced shelf angles, lintels, and support ledges. You know, so often if you're building a multi-story building, after you get to that 3rd floor or 4th floor, you're then required to add a support ledge, and that can be a tremendous increase in the cost of your project. With thin brick, you don't have that. You can just keep going higher and higher. The brick does not stack on itself, so you can go as high as you want without adding expensive support ledges. There's increased sustainability. Again, it's 1/6 the material, so you're minimizing the use of raw materials. You're extending the quarry life as well of your brick manufacturer, which they always like. And then you have thin alternative to other materials. So it's competitive in price with thin stone and manufactured stone, but it's also around the same thickness, that same profile as other architectural facades. So if you're transitioning from one facade to another, from one material to another, it's much easier to transition from thin brick to thin stone than it would be from full depth brick to thin stone. Now there's a lighter load, so there's less structural concerns, less seismic concerns, and less structural need. There's less site impact. You have a much cleaner job site as well. Usually with traditional depth brick, you might have cubes and cubes and cubes of brick all over the job site, big mounds of sand, big heavy mixers. With thin brick, each one of those cubes will have 6 times as much brick on it. You're not going to have these big mounds of sand and heavy mixers. Most of your mortar is going to be mixed in 5-gallon buckets. Not usually going to be a big need for scaffolding all over the site. Much faster, much easier to install in most cases, and you bring in a greater labor pool. So not only is it quicker to install, but you also can bring in less skilled laborers to do the same job. So you can save typically between 15 and 20% just in man hours, but then you're bringing in other trades as well. Tile installers, stone, stucco, EIFS, and more. Thin brick comes in all the same shapes and sizes that you're used to with traditional masonry, but you got to be careful here because not all manufacturers can make all sizes and all textures and all colors in their thin brick. So early consultation is always critical. You'll probably hear me say early consultation a dozen times during this presentation. But let's review these sizes: modular, Norman, Econo, and utility. Those are the 4 most common sizes in thin brick, with modular being by far the most common. And that's going to have a height of 2 1/4 by a length of 7 5/8. Not 8, not 7 1/2, 7 5/8. Always pay close attention to what your dimensions are on your product, both on height and length, but also in thickness. If you've specified a 3/4 inch thin brick, but you want to have 1 inch projections, it's going to be very difficult to do when you only have 3/4 inch thickness. So always specify your bricks by their actual dimensions, not just by their name. What we call an Econo brick here, some people might call a jumbo modular or a closure brick. What we call an end cap, some people may call a jam cap. So there's a lot of different names for shapes. There's a lot of different names for sizes. And anytime you can specify a brick and include drawings in there as well, detailing those dimensions, that will always come in handy and eliminate confusion. But it's, again, important to note, let your sizes and shapes work for you and don't fight against them, especially since most of the time when you're designing with thin brick, you're going to be designing with an exterior module. So let those dimensions fall where they need to fall. Don't end up creating a lot of extra cuts, a lot of stretched joints, a lot of extra job site work. Pay attention to those dimensions. You'll get better bids. You'll get better constructability. And it's also important to note, do not fall in love with a brick only to find out later that you cannot get it in the size or in the thickness that you want from that manufacturer. So early consultation is always critical. So sizes and shapes that their availability can be very dependent based on who the manufacturer is, but how the manufacturers make those sizes and shapes can also be very different based on how their thin brick is manufactured. So not everybody makes thin brick the same way, and not all thin brick is created equal. Some of the most common ways to make thin brick is to either extrude it as a split tile or cut it green, and that would be before it has been fired. You can also cut a full depth brick, and typically you'll see that done from extruded brick or from a machine mold brick or even from a handmade brick, where you can cut that face off to the exact dimension that you're looking for. So here's an example of an extruded architectural split tile. This will come out of the extruder as a quad unit. So there's actually 4 individual thin bricks here. And you'll see this is manufactured with a kerf line. So after this product has been fired, it can easily be split into 4 individual units. And this is great for all types of thin brick wall systems applications, all different types of systems. There are some limitations. Typically those limitations will come in the form of color and texture availability because of how this is manufactured. Then you have a green cut thin brick. So this would happen as the product is being extruded. There will be a drag wire that you can either raise or lower that will trim your brick to thinner or thicker dimensions. And this is a great way to perhaps match full depth brick with thin brick on the same project. It also gives you a greater ability for more textures and more colors. You can also cut a brick after it's been fired. You'll typically see that on things like handmade brick or other extruded brick. That way you can get that exact dimension that you're looking for and get that same color, get that feel that you're looking for as well. Handmade brick is very expensive though. That's one of the drawbacks. So one thing that you could look for is a machine molded thin brick, trying to simulate that same look as a handmade, but a little bit less expensive. Then you have extruded thin brick, where it's not actually cut coming out of the extruder, it just comes out in that thin profile. One of the great benefits here is that you're able to get all the same texturing techniques and flashing on the brick when it's being fired, that same look as your traditional depth masonry, but you can capture some extra performance capabilities out of your thin brick. There's also tumbled thin brick. This is typically made as a full depth brick, and then it's put in the tumbler and knocks the corners off, knocks some edges, adds some chipping, definitely add some architectural detail there, and then the face would then be cut off, creating a thin brick. And there's glazed thin brick available too, also for all different types of thin brick wall system applications. Now, I kind of touched on some of the benefits and limitations as I was discussing the different types of brick, the most common types of brick. The benefits here to extruding and firing as a thin brick is that you can typically do this in a 1/2 inch, 5/8 inch profile. It's much less costly to produce because you're keeping extra hands off the process, extra steps off the process. But you might find some limitations here. You'll have more limited variety of colors and textures available to you, and you're going to be limited to those extruded brick, not those molded looks like we discussed before. But one of the benefits is that you're able to potentially put these on all different types of thin brick wall systems. Now over to the extruded or the molded and fired as a full brick and cut as a thin. One of the best benefit here is that you can perfectly match from the same lot your full depth brick with your thin brick. You'll guarantee that your full and your thin will look exactly the same on your project. You also have unlimited variety of colors and textures. Anybody that makes a brick can then make a thin brick if they cut the face off. And a variety of thicknesses are available to you. You could set that saw to give you a 3/4 inch. You could set it to give you 1.5 inches. Whatever you need for your particular project could be easily done. But the major limitation here is increased cost. Much more expensive to cut a brick after it's been fired than it is to produce it thin. So there's different types of brick out there, but there's also different types of systems. And those different types of brick may be more suitable to certain systems than they are to others. So we'll go through those and discuss those briefly. Some of the major thin brick installation systems are precast and tilt-up. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, I'll just refer to it as the term precast because that really doesn't make any bearing on the thin brick, whether the panels are poured off-site or if the panels are manufactured on-site. But in precast, you're making these panels off-site in a controlled environment, and in tilt-up, it's being poured on-site and then tilted into place. Then we also have panelized off-site. So this will be either a stud backup, usually either steel or wood framing. And you can even panelize these complete walls, including all of your windows in there as well. And those panelized off-site will take advantage of some of the different site-applied methods. Now, those site-applied methods include your traditional thick-set systems, your adhesive mortar, otherwise known as thin-set systems, but also metal panel systems as well. So those different on-site systems, I just mentioned, number one, direct mortar set, known as your thick set. So this will utilize a masonry backup or concrete CMU backup. And then you have a lath and mortar thick set, which would require the use of metal lath, your adhesive mortar, your thin set systems, and then also metal or foam panel systems. Now, I'm not going to really touch on foam panels today. They are not as tested and as tried and true as the metal panels. So we'll kind of shy away from foam today, but they do operate under the same principle as your metal panels. Now, your thick set masonry systems. So we're looking at a picture here where they have CMU, and in this case, your metal lath is actually optional. when you're going over CMU. But you're going to have have a water-resistant barrier. Again, metal lath is optional. 3/8 inch setting bed, minimum 1.25 inches is recommended, and that's so your brick can set into that bed. Sometimes your systems manufacturer may recommend a mortar additive to increase the plasticity there, and then you're going to have flashing and weeps, just like you would with traditional masonry, changes in your wall section with a weep screed at the base. Now, the thick set installation with metal lath is actually the only method of adhering thin brick that is directly described in the International Building Code. Now, all other methods are actually prescribed by performance. And here's a picture of self-furring metal lath. You'll notice those dimples on there. That's sometimes an overlooked component. You always want to see a self-furring metal lath. That makes a big deal. It's a big deal whenever you're installing to make something that will last a lot longer. So here's a thick set going over wood framing here. And in this case, that metal lath is not optional. You must utilize that to provide that structural support. You're going to have a layer of water-resistant barrier. And again, 3/8 inch minimum to 1.25 inch thickness on your mortar bed. Optional mortar additives again. And fasteners per ASTM C1063. And again, flashing and weeps at changes in wall sections and a weep screed at your wall base. Now here is the installation process here for a thick set system. And once your proper drainage system is installed, that metal lath is put in place. Then a scratch coat is applied and allowed to cure, and the adhered material is then back buttered and put in place. Now in this picture, we're using stone, but thin brick is done the exact same way. Now that metal lath should be furred away from the membrane. Remember, we want to see that self-furring 3/8 inch lath. It's preferred and typically it's specified. But unfortunately, that requirement is sometimes overlooked, and lath is either nailed or stapled directly to the wall with no good gap there, and that will reduce the thickness of the setting bed, and it will decrease your performance. So we want to see a scratch coat with a minimum 1/2 inch, and we should completely cover that furring on the lath. And without the furring, the scratch coat is usually much thinner, and it would be prone to cracking. That scratch coat should be allowed to cure for a minimum of 24 to 48 hours, depending on the material, and follow those manufacturer's recommendations when you're specifying this, because you don't want to void your warranties, the installer, if he installs it improperly. So here you can see the same thing with brick, and you can't be too thin here, right? So that brick needs to sit properly in that bed. That thicker the bed, the more you can push that brick in. If your brick wasn't really cut properly and you have some varying thicknesses in there, this will allow you to push some of the bricks a little further in so that you can maintain that proper face plane on the outside. Now, thin set is becoming the most common, is becoming more and more common, and it's probably the most common means of installing thin brick right now. And there are a number of different manufacturers making high quality thin set systems, and they're offering these with long-term warranties as well. And this can be one of the cheapest ways to install thin brick, but one of the drawbacks is that it requires a near perfect substrate and it requires uniform brick. So we're going to mimic that substrate surface. The brick will mimic substrate surface, and you need a plumb level substrate, and you have to make sure you design and detail for movement. It's very critical when using a thin set system. And so in this thin set system, your cement board and your polymer modified mortar will replace your metal lath. As you'll see here, number 29, cement board with a waterproof coating, a polymer modified mortar bed, and then we're going to install our thin brick on top of that. Then we have metal panels. This one over studs. Metal panels, we'll really kind of go into detail on these, but you're going to have 2 layers of air and water barrier behind it. That metal panel will replace that metal lath as part of your system. Typically, you're going to adhere the thin brick to the metal panel, and you're going to want to make sure that you use the manufacturer's prescribed mastic or adhesive because there are some fantastic warranties out there, and we don't want to void those warranties. Some of these manufacturers offer 10, 15, or even 25-year warranties on these products. So we want to make sure we take advantage of that. And then after your brick is put in place, you can use type N or type S mortar, and you just fill a grout bag and grout around that brick just like you're putting icing on a cake. Now, it's much easier to install and can be installed in all types of weather. So if you're having to wait 24 to 48 hours for your mortar bed to cure on a thick set system, and then it rains and you might have to start some of it over or make sure it's covered up, you don't have that issue with the metal panels. You can install it in cold weather, you can install it in hot weather, you can install it in humid environments in the rain. It's much easier to install as well. There's no mason or trowel skills required to apply the mortar, adhere the brick, or keep your courses level. The same means of tying the brick to the panel is also used as to help you course the brick properly. So it doesn't require the same amount of skill, and this is where you're able to bring in more than one trade. You can bring in tile installers, stone and eaves installers, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, school children. It really is that easy to install. But you don't have to sacrifice your aesthetics just because you're using thin brick with metal panels. And if installed properly, you shouldn't be able to tell that you aren't looking at traditional masonry. So you can achieve that same look, you just have to go about it a little bit differently. So here are some of the system components of a typical metal panel system. There'll be 2 layers of WRB, as I mentioned before, a corrosion resistant minimum 26 gauge steel support panel, the non-corrosive screws and nails with different types specified, whether you're going into wood stud or steel stud or concrete backup. And again, just like with traditional masonry, you'll have flashing, you'll have air weep vents, you'll have control joints for movement throughout as well. Pay close attention to what your system manufacturer recommends. Definitely discuss all these details with your brick representative, with your system manufacturer representative, and all these details, all these drawings that we're kind of moving quickly through today should all be available to you by either the manufacturer's websites or your brick distributor's website. Again, early consultation is always critical anytime you're designing with thin brick. So here are some of the different metal panel manufacturers. Some of them have different systems. They look a little bit different, but most of them operate the same way. Regardless of the metal panel system, they typically will utilize a wall tie to support the mortar joint and tie that brick to the structure. Now, these wall ties, like I mentioned before, also aid in the positioning of the brick, which takes all that guesswork out. Now there are a few that incorporate additional mechanical fastening, like in the top left here. This actually doesn't use any adhesion. It only uses grooving in the top and the bottom of the brick. The brick can either slide in or snap into place, so no adhesives necessary, but then again, you come back and grout around it. Top right, a little bit of a blend. You have there's no grooves cut in the brick, and it sits on the support ledge, but it also has a pull down tie that can come down and engage the brick and give you a little extra mechanical fastening. And then similarly down here at the bottom, we see these brick resting directly on these wall ties. But one thing we want to think about here is that if your brick is sitting directly on a wall tie, then that's an area of the brick that won't have any mortar coverage. So you want to look for a metal panel that has a raised tie on an angle so that mortar can get underneath the brick and around the tie. Like you see here looking through the back of this panel, you can see that mortar is able to get underneath the brick and around the tie, tying your brick to your panel. Your panel is tied to your structure through these pre-punched screw holes into the studs of your building. Now, I mentioned we're thinning down our wall sections here by going with thin brick. So you can cut down 3 inches pretty quick off your wall section, right? Because you're going from maybe a 3 5/8 inch product down to a 5/8 inch thick product. You're also eliminating most of your air cavity, so there's another inch or 2 gone. So what do we want to do with those extra 4 inches, extra 5 inches of space? Do we want to put more insulation in there? So you can get another 4 inches of rigid insulation in your wall and keeping that same thickness by then moving to thin brick. So thin brick easily complies, thin brick and metal panel systems easily comply with energy code and continuous insulation requirements. And again, you can install these panels on the outside of your continuous insulation by adjusting your fastener length. Of course, during this process, you have to mark those stud locations on that rigid insulation. There are multiple different types of fastener requirements here. This is a lot to read through, but just know that based on the distances between your stud and your panel, and based on the types of studs that you're screwing into, you may have to change your different fasteners. And just like how not all brick is the same, not all metal panels are the same either. So make sure you're getting the performance characteristics that your project demands. Make sure you're getting water penetration resistance from ASTM E331. Make sure you're getting structural performance and wind load deflection from ASTM E330. Shear bond strength in C297. Fastener pull through, fastener withdrawal from ASTM D1037, and corrosion resistance like salt spray, ASTM B117. And also make sure that your metal panels are NFPA 285 compliant as well and do not contribute to any fire and smoke. So here's the installation process here for these metal panels. Step one, we need to verify that the water barrier. All right, I'll go back real quick because I just saw we had some questions. Jack, you asked about 24 inch or 24 inch or longer, made in Iowa. Is that available as a thin brick? Yes, it can be cut. It's to different thicknesses, but that's a special order, so you need to talk to your brick rep on that. And then I just mentioned rigid insulation. Does this require an FPA 285 testing? It needs to. Make sure that if you're specifying a metal panel that it has undergone that NFPA 285 test. If you need more information on that, feel free to reach out. So installing these metal panels. Step one, we're going to verify the installation of the water barrier, air barrier, vapor barrier, drainage mat, and insulation. And we're going to start in the bottom corner and work to the other side, ensuring that the metal panels are coursing, that they're level, and that they're plumb. And this is a two-man job. There we go. So we're going to fasten every square foot, every 8 inches vertical, every 16 inches horizontal. We're going to keep those panels flat. We don't want to create a pocket or have them bubble or warp whenever we're fastening them. We want to keep each panel level, and using a magnetic level here certainly does help out. And we're going to terminate these panels 3/8 of an inch from windows, doors, and dissimilar materials. Now, when we're adhering the brick, we want to dab this adhesive at the 1/3 points. Okay, we don't want to create a dam by putting a long horizontal stream across the back of a brick. Now, you can put a long vertical stream if you're installing a soldier course or if you're doing thin stone. But again, we want to just do a quick little dab at the 1/3 points on the back of the brick. And when we start installing the brick, we're going to start at the outside corner, and we're going to work our way in and laying that bottom course first. So we make sure we have proper horizontal spacing, terminating the brick 3/8 of an inch from any openings or trim. Here's one example of an interior corner. Of course, you can do this a little bit differently if you desire. But after your brick is adhered, you're going to come back, and really easy just to fill a grout bag or a grout gun, and you're going to overfill those joints with either type N or type S, depending on what your project requires. Overfill, and then once they're thumbprint dry, you can come back and strike those joints and really get any different type of joint geometry you're looking for there. Grapevines, concave, anything you're looking for, you can get with these metal panels. But again, very easy to do. All different types of trades. And one more little added benefit. Now, obviously this wasn't us because we would never misdeliver brick, but sometimes brick manufacturers have been known to not be on time when delivering brick, and that can create a massive headache in the construction process. But one benefit of metal panel systems and thin brick in general is that the brick is not supporting itself. So there's 3 different types of brick on this project. We have a red modular size, we have a buff modular size, and we have a red Norman. Well, the field brick, the red mods were delivered first, but no big deal. They were able to go ahead and install all of those red mods because they're using a metal panel system, and then they're able to come back and install the rest of the brick after the field brick was already put in. So gives you a lot more flexibility too in that construction process. And notice they're using scissor lifts and man lifts. They're not using a lot of scaffolding, much cleaner job site as well. And to sum up some of these little details here, thin brick and metal panels do utilize flashes and weeps, just like conventional masonry. Water does get in. We got to get that water right back out, and these will perform. These will perform as good or anything that's out there. So metal panels, definitely the top of the performance chart there. Now, on to prefabricated panels. Let me see if we have any questions here before I jump into that. From Janet, does thickset have to use plywood backing, or can glass mat sheathing be used? Yeah, you can use glass mat sheathing. You just have to make sure that that you have metal lath in there to actually provide that structural support. All right. So prefabricated panels. These can utilize wood stud or steel stud, and this is all about quality control and speed. Now, in this picture here, you can see they're using a metal panel system, but it's a little bit more common to see thin set systems that were described before with cement board and polymer modified adhesives. So that's a little bit more common, but these metal panels are quite common as well. But this is all about speed and quality control. But it's not about sacrificing aesthetics. You can achieve all the same looks in prefabrication that you can by constructing on site. And prefabrication is the future of masonry. Okay, it is more and more projects going that way every single day. So definitely familiarize yourself with the prefabrication process, because we're seeing more and more commercial projects going this way, usually for taller buildings, usually when ground space is at a premium, but eventually it'll be on to residential as well. And you don't have to sacrifice those aesthetics. Like I said, you don't have to sacrifice the performance of your buildings as well. And believe me, the people who install the brick are much happier installing it indoors than they are installing it outdoors. Temperature controlled environments work through bad weather. You can see here, these windows are already in place, but the same principles apply. He's starting in the bottom corner. He's working his way towards the middle and working his way up. After the panels are in, they're then installing the brick, terminating them 3/8 of an inch from window and door openings. Again, this is all about repeatability, speed, and quality control. And as a bit of a case study here, we have a fast food restaurant located in Maryland, but the wall panels were fabricated in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 2 weeks from the completion of the foundation of this building. They were flipping burgers and making money. So is it more expensive to have your exterior walls prefabricated? Yes, it is more expensive. But how much money could this fast food restaurant make by having their building completed a month earlier, or 2 months earlier, or 3 months earlier? I went past a big box store that was being built the other day, and it had just rained the day before, and there were helicopters on site, 2 helicopters drying the project site. And I'm thinking, man, that's got to be expensive. I bet they spent 30 grand today just trying to dry the site. Well, if it gets them back to building 1 day earlier, 2 days earlier, how much money does that big box store make in 1 day or in 1 week? So when we're talking thin brick wall systems, we need to be thinking about the total project completion. We need to be thinking about the time component here, completing these projects quicker, and what that could mean to your owner by delivering a project much faster than you could through traditional means. Another case study. This is 4 buildings, apartment buildings, 4 stories each, over 140,000 square feet of brick. Right off the bat, remember we talked about it, the higher you go, you can reduce those all your support ledges and brick shelves. And here they saved $100,000 on this project by using thin brick versus full depth brick just in those shelf angles, just in those lintels. We reduced the structural load requirements of this building, saving a lot of money. There's a lot less expensive to use scissor lifts than it was to put up scaffolding. They went from unionized masons to non-unionized, less skilled labor, and completed it faster, saving a tremendous amount of money. And 1/6 the material, that means 1/6 the trucks. So if this would have required 60 deliveries before, it only required 10 deliveries this time. Total savings on this project, over $1 million. Not all projects will result in this type of savings. And again, I want to make clear, I mentioned at the very beginning, thin brick is not right for every single project, but it does warrant you at least taking that into consideration before starting any masonry project. So that's kind of it for what we would call the adhered, both on-site and off-site. But staying with that off-site, again, the future of masonry, we'll talk about embedded. So this is embedded thin brick in either precast or tilt-up. And again, I'll mainly just use the term precast because from a thin brick perspective, it doesn't matter if it's being done off-site or on-site. Precast is made at the manufacturing facility. A very high amount of quality control. Tilt-up panels are done on-site. It does require a larger site to do this. You'll see this much more commonly done west of the Mississippi, but there are plenty of examples on the East Coast as well. And you can make larger panels with tilt-up because you're at the job site. Whereas with precast, you can only make panels so large that will fit on a truck. So you are limited to DOT requirements. And you might also, your precaster is going to have to pay special attention to overpasses and underpasses, the route that he has to take to get to a job site. If they had to close a road or close an area just to allow them to get in. So there's some special considerations there. But again, early consultation, you'll be working with your precaster very early on these panel dimensions, and that can affect your brick as well. So brick has to be a part of those discussions early on when discussing the size of your panels. Now, thin brick for precast, embedded thin brick, they require an even higher performing thin brick than what's required out of these other thin brick wall systems. For instance, our face dimensions for PCI compliant thin brick is +0 to -1/16 of an inch. So it is a very, very tight tolerance. It's tile-like tolerances here. PCI stands for Precast Pre-Stressed Concrete Institute, and it's the industry organization that governs how they operate, sets standards and rules for themselves, and they have brick specifications as well, including those face dimensions. There's also a very important one is absorption rates, because we're embedding this brick into a barrier wall. It is no longer, your brick is no longer part of a cavity wall. It is now in a barrier wall. And that precast concrete is going to have an absorption rate of about 2.5%. So we need a thin brick that will be as close as possible to match, needs to be below 6%. PCI compliant thin bricks go through ASTM testing for freestall cycling of 50 cycles, but it actually undergoes an additional 300 cycles of testing while it's embedded in a precast panel. So we want to ensure that this building will perform, and this is all about performance, that your thin brick and your walls will perform over the life of the building. PCI compliant thin bricks are always non-effloresced, have a high modulus of rupture, high compressive strength, are always chemically resistant. These are the highest performing bricks in the industry, the ones that meet these PCI standards. Now, how you get the brick embedded in the concrete is very important. This is a massively important step, but often overlooked. And that's somewhat okay from your perspective when it comes to selecting liner. Because whenever different liner different precasters prefer different types of liner, and we'll talk about some of those, but it's important that you don't have to get too involved in specifying liner type, because the precasters are going to have their bids based on the type of liner that they like to use, based on their experiences, based on their craftsmanship. So get involved with the liner, and you might need to get involved with the liner manufacturers, especially if you've got some really unique details. But by and large, you just need to know about it, but let the precaster use what's best for them. There are plenty of battles to fight and win with a precaster. Let them win this one. you can win one that's a little bit more important to you. So some of these different types, we have plastic, and this will include snap liners, which are single-use trays. Most of your plastic form liner will come in huge sheets, long rolls that are cut and trimmed to size. They are the most commonly used, and it's simply because they're priced under $1 a square foot. They do require some tight dimensional requirements here, but you do have some limitations. It is one-time use. You are limited to a concave joint, and it's one-time use, but it is made of recycled material, and you can throw it back in the recycling chain after it's being used. Let's see, we can go on to rubber form liners. These are a little bit less commonly used, but more commonly used when you have a large job with many repeatable forms. Now, it's priced at $25 a square foot, but that's only really considerate that if it's only being used one time. If this is being used 30 times for 30 forms, then now we're well under $1 per square foot when it comes to how much this stuff costs. So it can be made for specific projects, or it can be used on multiple projects. And it's capable for greater variation in your brick dimensions. So we can go all the way to 1/8 of an inch plus or minus on our brick, rather than having to stick to those real tight +0 to -1/16 requirements. We have more joint treatments available to us as well. And again, it can be used multiple times instead of being single use. And when designing with precast, effectiveness and efficiency is in the details. You want to know your window and door opening positions and sizes, the footprint of your building. We say design from the outside in, okay? There's a lot of things going on in this picture right here. It seems like maybe a relatively simple parking deck, but there's a lot of details that have to be thought about. One, we want to think about the corners of our building. There's two main types of corners that are used. There are more, but these are the two most common. One being the butt joint, which is panel A and panel B, and they butt up to each other. And so the thickness of this panel will determine where this joint will be, where these two panels meet. Typically, you're going to be using a 2-3-2 sandwich panel, something like that. So you're going to have about an 8-inch thick panel, which is great dimension for brick. We'll just wrap a corner brick around there, a modular size corner brick. Whereas your precaster, this may be the battle you want to win. They want to use a mitered corner because it's cheaper and easier for them to do. But you can't wrap, let me bring my cursor here, you can't wrap a brick around two panels. They have to be fully encapsulated in one. So now you've got an opening at the edge of all your corners. And that can be a disaster because someone has to come back and fill that in with caulk. They has to be maintained over the life of the building. They'll have to keep coming back out and doing it. So pick and choose your battles. Pick and choose where you use those type of details. And it may be that on certain projects, you may be more prone to use those as well to save money. But a lot going on this parking deck. We have a half-run bond. We have a stack bond going up. We have a soldier course. We have an Aldi around this window that brings a lot of shading to the outside of this window. And this is just with a 5/8 inch thick brick. So remember your sizes, remember your dimensions, let them work for you. If you've got a 5/8 inch thick thin brick, don't try to step out 3/4 of an inch. Stick to your dimensions. And remember your corner dimensions. Most thin brick, your modular thin brick corners are going to be 2 1/4 by 7 5/8 by 3 5/8. So when you're stepping out on this column cover, keep it with those brick dimensions. They've stepped out utilizing the corners properly instead of creating a lot of extra cuts, which would add to cost and decrease constructability. There's a arch over this top story of windows. There's a step-up cornice or a corbelling element at the top. Man, just a lot of design detail packed into this parking deck, but done with budget and done with constructability in mind. This is a neat picture. This is one single panel from this inside corner all the way over to the right and then up to this concrete reveal. And we have a half-run bond, a soldier course, an arch, a keystone element, which is just the exposed concrete that's then been sandblasted. And then we have an any in here as well. So a lot of detail packed in, all of that work done by unskilled labor. from the brick perspective. Now, obviously, there's very skilled carpenters involved building these forms. There's very skilled engineering behind this. There's very skilled people with the concrete. But in terms of the masonry, unskilled masonry, unskilled laborers doing that install. So innies and outies, well, innies are pretty easy to do with thin brick. You just build your form. In this case, this one course is raised, and that's what that detail will look like whenever it's on your building. And likewise, here's this full bed here with our form, and here's what this looks like when it's up on the wall. So outies a little bit more difficult, innies a little bit easier to achieve, and you really can't go more than about 3 feet vertically when you're doing corners. Most of the time, these corners will be 1 brick wide. In this case, it's 3.5. So they went up to almost three feet here on these panels, utilizing rubber forms. This particular building had a lot of repeatable forms on it. So after your brick is placed into your liner, and that liner is in your casting bed, then you're ready to place all of your reinforcing steel, your window and door openings, your weld plates, anything that you need, any insulation that you need, anything that's going inside the panel, and then you're ready to place your concrete. Now, most of the time, this will take place during the course of the day. The last thing they do at the end of the workday is they place the concrete, then they leave, because this is high strength, high early concrete, 5,000 PSI. It'll be 3,800 PSI after about 12 hours. So they place this concrete at the end of the workday. They come back the next morning. It's cured, ready to be pulled. It's good for structural panels as well. And now you're ready to clean your panels. Now we wax the face of the brick before it goes to the precaster, because the wax will act as a bond breaker. So that concrete that sinks down to the face of the brick will then stick to the wax and can be washed off with hot water, melts the wax, concrete falls off with it. You have to clean the panels anyway, so it's a very simple and straightforward process. And then they're loaded onto trucks, taken to the job site, or if this is tilt wall construction, it's already at the job site. But loaded onto trucks, taken to the job site, and then these panels are welded together. No masons involved anywhere in that process. Another case study, this is the Gill Simpson headquarters, 60,000 pieces of flats, 3,700 corners and other unique shapes. None more unique than this 2-headed thin brick on this pilaster feature. So this one detail right here with this 2-headed thin brick, so head, stretcher, that determined exactly how this brick had to be manufactured. The only way to do this is by making a face brick, a full depth brick, and then cutting it to create a 2-headed thin brick. And because of that, all the rest of the brick on this project needed to be made from full depth brick and then cut down. So this can be a net positive because the architect, the owner, got exactly the brick that they wanted for their project, but it can be a negative. They added a tremendous amount of cost to the building by having to utilize a full depth brick that could be cut down. They also decrease the number of manufacturers that they could potentially work with, which is good for the winning manufacturer, but it could be bad for availability out there as well, because this is a unique circumstance. So again, let your brick dimensions work for you. Don't fight against them. You can, it is important to note, you can achieve all these same looks in thin brick and precast that you can achieve with conventional masonry. You just have to go about it a little bit different. And just because you can do it doesn't always mean you should, but if you want to do it, it can be done. And this is really a testament to the precast concrete and to the form liner and how you're creating these different shapes. You can do anything you want almost if you're willing to go with it. Not just for architectural precast, but structural as well, including the Alabama State University football stadium, utilizing structural precast and architectural precast on the same project. And then here's a building on Lake Erie for over 30 years, performed with no issues. And they tell me it gets a little bit cold there. I wouldn't know. I'm down in South Carolina, but apparently it gets cold in Cleveland, and this building has performed wonderfully over the lifespan. And we've talked about thin brick for exterior uses. We didn't really mention interior, but you can utilize many of the same systems, particularly thin set systems and metal panel systems, but also what's called the direct applied method, or the caulk method as well, where you're just basically gluing your thin brick to wallboard. Thin brick installed is going to be less than 10 pounds per square foot, depending on the type of system. So you can get away with a lot here. And you can achieve a lot aesthetically. This is a two-man job, 2 ladders, metal panels. Those panels will bend, and you can mold them to the shape of your substrate, and then you're just placing brick. Think about how difficult that would be to come back to an existing building and do that with traditional masonry. Well, you can achieve it with thin brick. Man caves, restaurant interiors, hotel lobbies, brew pubs. I mean, every brew pub has to have interior thin brick. I think that's a law. And chimneys, fireplaces, you'll see a lot of thin brick utilized, both interior and exterior. So they'll run this thin brick all the way up to the ceiling and then catch back up again above the roof line. But this is very, very common place to see interior thin brick. Again, remember, transitioning from different materials on this multifamily unit. You have to pay attention if you're switching from masonry to vinyl siding on how you have to step in and step out. You'd lose some interior square footage here, but not with thin brick, because it's going to have that same thickness, that same profile as your vinyl siding. You'll see a lot of big box stores and strip malls utilizing thin brick, both on exteriors and interiors. I mean, thin brick can be about anywhere. You could be looking at a project and not even realize you're looking at thin brick. That's part of the whole point. If installed and designed properly, you shouldn't be able to tell the difference. Government, municipalities, schools, they're large consumers of thin brick. Libraries, courthouses, hospitals, all different types of projects. This was a pre-panelized project. These panels were manufactured off-site and taken to the job site. Again, multifamily, mixed use, very, very common to see thin brick, especially as the higher you go, the tighter your dimensional requirements on the outside, on busy streets, downtowns. This is a structural precast building built just like a parking deck, but done with these corded panels around the outside. No special brick needed here, just some well done corded panels here on these concrete panels. Parking decks, obviously a big usage of parking decks utilizing embedded thin brick and precast. Hospitals, fire departments, police stations, schools, and prisons. Although this isn't a prison over here. This is Jack Britt High School outside of Fayetteville, North Carolina. It looks a little bit like a prison, but it only has 8 feet of barbed wire around it instead of 20. And really like this building here. This is an Embassy Suites in Atlanta. It was built in 1996 in conjunction with the Atlanta Olympics. And the neat thing about this building is that if you see it today, it looks almost identical to the way it looked 25 years ago. And that's a testament to the endurance of thin brick, to the long-term durability of thin brick, to the design appeal of thin brick, how it stands the test of time. I mean, you only get one chance to make a first impression, but with thin brick, you can make a first impression that will last a lifetime. And to summarize, thin brick comes in nearly all shapes and sizes. Not all thin bricks are created the same way, and not all will perform the same way. Again, early consultation is critical. And if you design properly and install it properly, one should not be able to tell they are not looking at traditional depth masonry. But optimum performance results from successful material selection, design detailing, and construction practices. And remember, at Glen-Gery, we want to make beautiful building products that last forever. You can do that with thin brick wall systems. All right, so that sums it up right at 2 o'clock. Thank you for hanging around. We've got some questions and some comments. All right, so we'll start off here with Jeff Bryan. Now, Mr. Bryan up there in Minnesota, I'm not hating on masons, man. Masons are fantastic. They're great. But in some instances with thin brick, with some site considerations, it could be thin brick or bust in some instances. So we love masons. They're fantastic. We love what they do. If we have a project that needs to use thin brick on it, it does open up the job site to some other trades. So that is one benefit to thin brick. But no, I don't want to come off as hating on masons. We love masons. What is the smallest joint? This is from Greg. What is the smallest joint that can be used between courses? Well, we want to utilize, we want to make it look like traditional depth masonry, and you can't go too thin. I'm not sure exactly what the thinnest. I think it's 1/4 of an inch. Have to look that up to get back to you. Typically, you'll see 3/8 of an inch joints between your courses. Do I have any information? This is from Jonathan. Do I have any information to which of these thin brick projects utilized the mechanical fastener systems? We can, Jonathan, we can go back and perhaps send you some information if you have a question. Let's reach out to your Glen-Gery rep. We can certainly go through some different projects with you, talk about which project use which type of system, benefits, advantages to some or others. So yes, please, by all means, reach out to us. We can go through there. Some more comments flying in. Thank you for these. We really appreciate it. Around Philadelphia, there are examples of 19th century buildings with 1/8 inch joints. Well, that's good to know. So you can go a little bit thinner. I'd be careful with that. I'd be very careful with that with thin brick. Will thin brick look exactly the same when located directly next to typical face brick? Thank you, Michael. That's a fantastic question. It all depends on how your thin brick is manufactured. So if some manufacturers make thin brick the exact same way they make their face brick, because all they're doing is taking their face brick and then cutting the face off. That is the only way to guarantee that your thin brick will look exactly the same. And then in addition to that, it needs to be installed the same time, the same temperatures, the same environment, to make sure that mortar looks the same, so your whole appearance comes off the same. But if you've got, let's say, a precast parking deck next to your hospital, and your hospital is made with face brick and your precast parking deck is made with a split tile, well, it can be close. Your manufacturer can make that thin brick look almost identical. It can perform in the precast and look close, but unless your brick is fired at the same time, at the same temperature, on the same kiln car, it may not look exactly the same. Eugene asked a question. Does this apply to thin stone? For the most part, yes. Pretty much all of those, except for precast, all of those installation systems, thick set, thin set, metal panels, they apply to thin stone as well, both natural and manufactured. Well, we kind of rolled through a bunch of questions there. There's still probably some flying in. I really want to thank everybody for being part of this today. Definitely reach out to your Glen-Gery rep if you have any additional questions or want to learn more about our products. Check in our Eventbrite page. We have more presentations like this coming up, not just for thin brick, but for all sorts of masonry products. I believe our next one is how to build the impossible, which is about a very, very unique building down in Australia, the crumpled bag building. So we've got some really unique case studies coming up. We've got fantastic presentations we can deliver both in webinar form or privately for your firm, both virtual and hopefully one day soon we can safely re-enter your properties and your firms and come back and meet face to face again. So we'll be happy to do those once it's safe to do so. But in the meantime, definitely reach out to your brick distributor, your Glen-Gery rep. We'd be happy to come do these for you in person sometime. So if there's no more questions flying in right now, we'll go ahead and end it there. Again, I want to thank everybody for giving me the time and the opportunity to speak to you today. Again, my name is Jay Morrison. You can see my contact information down at the bottom of your screen. You can also see the contact information for Leroy Danforth. He is our wall systems manager, in charge of our AIA program and making sure we have some fantastic presentations to offer you guys. So again, reach out to us or to anybody at Glen-Gery. We are so happy to be here to help you out on all of your masonry project needs. And so thank you. With that, I'm going to close off. Brian, anything else we need to cover?
No, that's all. Thank you, Jay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. Be safe. Have a great day, a great rest of your week, and have a great 2021. Thank you so much.